Balake. Where is Balake at?
My name's Blake.
Do you want to go to war, Balake? I'm for real. Ron.
Ron is right here, everyone. Welcome back for more SPTV, where every day is a great day not to be in a cult. Guys, we're talking about Tom Cruise dishing out Scientology punishments. What are we talking about? For those of you who might remember the video that Tom Cruise did, this was a video that was only intended to be used for internal use for other Scientologists. And it was a video that he recorded for the event, the Scientology event in 2004, where he was awarded Scientology's IAS Freedom Medal, but they created a special version of the medal just for Tom Cruise. So it was called the IAS Freedom Medal of Valor. And I like to call this video the crazy black turtleneck video, because it's crazy Tom Cruise. This is when Tom Cruise officially morphed into his final and true form of crazy Tom Cruise. And he's wearing this black turtleneck, and he's got this lamp behind him, and he's got the Mission Impossible, the Limp Bizkit Mission Impossible theme going in the background for the entire video. And he's talking about KSW and I don't do anything. And he's like, I take KSW very seriously. One of the things he says in this video is, he goes, I put in ethics ruthlessly on others because I put in ethics ruthlessly on myself. Well, what does that mean? I put in ethics ruthlessly. That is basically a Scientology euphemism for handing out Scientology punishments. And what are the Scientology punishments? Scientology punishments are essentially what Scientology calls their lower ethics conditions. So when Tom Cruise is putting ethics in ruthlessly on his environment and people in his environment, and he's putting in ethics ruthlessly on himself, what are these things that he's doing? What do they mean? What do they look like? What do they require? That's what we're here to talk about today. And to do that with me is the one and only Marilyn Honig. Welcome.
Hello. Hi. Thanks for having me. Hey, everybody.
My pleasure. Marilyn's channel can be found here on YouTube at Coffee, Cults, and Crafts. I'm happy to see that all your subscribers came back there. That
yes.
a magical little treat. Okay, so Marilyn, you have a whole bunch of questions that you wanted to ask me about the Scientology lower ethics conditions. I think this is a fascinating subject that hasn't really gotten enough airtime because honestly, it can be a little boring. Each one of these conditions have steps that are kind of, if someone who's not familiar with Scientology reads these steps, they're kind of meaningless.
Yeah. And
going through the trouble of explaining them in a standalone dedicated video just doesn't get me all excited. But what makes it more fun is to answer questions about this subject from someone who's already been in this space for a long time. I'm really curious to know what questions you have on these topics, and we'll try to keep it as interesting as possible.
Yeah, I'll just preface this with saying that I am very fascinated with the human condition of it all, the behavior, psychology, in some cases psychopathy. And I started this little project with the late Doug Scott Kramer, a friend from Days But Not Confused. And he really helped me to understand some of the things that go on that are very similar to what I went through in my call. So he was really digging into the tech, as they call it. And we had a whole list of things ready to go. And unfortunately, he's not with us anymore. So I thought, hey, I'll ask all the SPs that I know to help me out with this. And one of the things on our list was the lower conditions. So I guess my first question is, so many questions, but what are they? What do Scientologists think they are, and what are they really? And I know there's a whole list of conditions, and then there's the lower conditions. So what are you taught that they are, and what do you really think that they are?
Oh God, it's funny. It's hard to start describing this without doing it like the way a Scientologist would. And that's probably the fairest way to start answering this question. So it's called a lower ethics condition. That implies there are higher ethics conditions, which there are. And so then what is an ethics condition in general? And why is it called an ethics condition? Here's like the essence of it. L. Ron Hubbard says, in life, you're never just existing. You don't exist in a vacuum. You are at all times having some sort of an effect on your environment. It's never just no effect. You're either being some force for good or some force for bad, whether it's intentional or unintentional. And one of the discoveries of Scientology is identifying what these conditions are. And there's no point identifying a condition without providing a way to improve that condition or move up into the higher condition. And the highest condition in Scientology would be power. And the lowest condition in Scientology is confusion. And so basically the idea is L. Ron Hubbard says he has this whole list of conditions, and the upper conditions are ones when you're in a good state, varying degrees of being in a good state, a productive, contributive, beneficial state, and then varying degrees of being in a negative state where you're hurting yourself and you're hurting people around you. And each condition has a series of steps that L. Ron Hubbard says, if you follow the steps precisely as laid out, and maybe with a little bit of creativity and ingenuity, you can always improve your condition, and not just in one area of your life, but in all areas of your life. And the cause of a low condition, well, he likes to make like definitive general sweeping statements, but so in one statement, it's like the cause of a low condition is failing to properly identify what condition you're actually in and apply the formula of that condition. And without doing that, you will inevitably fall lower and lower and lower and lower until you properly identify the condition and apply the formula. Now, don't think about it too deeply, because you might wonder, well, then how did anyone for the past 5,000 years ever rise up into any higher condition? Don't think about it, Marilyn. You might realize you're in a cult.
Okay. Okay.
If anyone
I think I'm falling into doubt.
If anyone ever moved up into a higher condition in life in the past 5,000 years, it's because they unintentionally or unknowingly was applying a Scientology principle, you know? So even before L. Ron Hubbard created them, you know?
I think I fall into confusion, which is what, the bottom?
That's right. That is right. So I don't know. I hope that's a little bit of a explanation there.
So is it is it sold to you as a good thing? I mean, when you first sign up for Scientology, it's not like you don't know right away that you're going to get punished, right? That you're going to get, shaken around, and that you're going to end up like in these lower conditions and feel like a piece of crap. Like, you don't know that.
You don't know that. This concept of the lower conditions, or the ethics conditions in general. By the way, this is one of those things that you're introduced to very, very early on, even in the introductory courses. But it's explained in a way, kind of like the information about suppressive persons and potential trouble sources and disconnection. That's introduced very early on, and it's explained in a way where it seems, wow, this makes a lot of sense. This is a great tool. You never realize they're going to tell you your grandma is a suppressive person, you know. And so when you read about the ethics conditions, you're like, oh wow, this is a very kind of a proactive and positive and optimistic way of viewing life, of first of all having the balls and the integrity to recognize when a condition is bad, and having the courage to do something about it and want to improve it. But not only that, but giving you actual steps that you can follow. This is great. And it feels that way, especially when you think it's just something you're going to willingly apply to your own life. It doesn't really occur to you that once upon a time, one day you might end up on staff, and your senior might, assign you a lower condition just for showing some attitude or something like that,
Yeah. And knowing that Tom Cruise, applies it to everybody all the time, just they're throwing them around, right?
That's right. God forbid Tom Cruise gets 2 creams in his coffee instead of 1. You might be doing treason and scrubbing the dumpsters with a toothbrush or something.
So you answered my question of who assigns these and how do they find out that you are in that condition, is because you put the wrong amount of creams in, or you gave like this look like, oh, there's treason. Now, how do they know what's treason, enemy, doubt, all that?
It's highly subjective. So the upper conditions above, well, we haven't said in this video so far what the names of the conditions are, but the conditions above non-existence are assigned just based on statistics usually. And the conditions below non-existence are quite subjective. Now in the C organization, there is an order written by L. Ron Hubbard that says certain actions automatically warrant a certain condition being assigned. So for example, non-compliance to an order. I forget non-compliance. I think non-compliance equals the doubt condition.
Okay, so that's under liability. So non-existence starts the lower conditions.
Yeah, non-existence is sort of the make-break, the threshold here. I said a moment ago that you never just have no impact on your environment, but the closest thing to having no impact would be the non-existence formula. So if you're a staff member or you're a SEERG member and you have a post and you have a statistic, if your statistic goes steeply down from one week to the next, you have to apply the non-existence formula to your post that week. Also, if your statistic is at a non-viable level, so let's say you're a bookseller and you sell one book a week, and then the next week you sell 2 books a week. Well, that's still non-viable. It's still close to zero. You would still have to apply non-existence. Also, when someone is assigned to a brand new post, it's considered, you have the post. You think everyone knows that you're on that post, but in reality, nobody knows you even exist. And you also have to apply the formula of non-existence. I think your question was, when do the lower conditions get assigned? How do you know you're in them? In Scientology, the ethics officer can assign you a condition, or any one of your seniors can assign you a condition. It's usually your direct senior has pretty much unlimited authority to assign you a condition, but it's usually either your senior or the ethics officer. I've never really seen someone assign themselves a lower condition, but it could happen.
Right. Who wants to be punished, right? So what types of things, like there's this thing called making amends, right? Is that something that you've done to somebody else, or what would put you in this? It just seems like so confusing, which is the bottom. But all these weird like checklists and things to do, and to know yourself, not know yourself, things like enemy and treason. Those are some really strong words. So how do you freaking navigate this, and what puts you here to begin with?
I've got to double check. I'm pretty sure that the liability formula is the one where you're doing a lot of amends.
Okay.
And I'm trying to pull it. I don't have the ethics book in front of me, so I'm going to try to. Yeah. So the formula for liability. I'll tell you what. I'm going to put a link to this in the private chat. If you're able to screen share this, maybe. Okay. If you want to.
Should be able to. There you go.
Okay, if you can scroll down to the 4 formula steps. Okay, so actually, I'm sorry. Let's scroll up to where it says condition of liability, and we'll just briefly explain when this is assigned. Okay, right there. A person is in the condition of liability when he does careless or intentional damage to other people, projects, groups, or activities. So that's the essence, is that you've already done some kind of damage. It's considered that you've already done some kind of damage, intentionally or otherwise. These actions go against the intentions. These actions go directly against the intentions and actions of the remainder of the team or the purpose of the project or activity. It is a liability to have such a person unwatched, as the person may do or continue to do things to stop forward progress of his group. This person cannot be trusted. Any efforts to correct him so he keeps the rules or agreements have not worked. The person just keeps on messing up. Okay, so so let's take the example that he actually gives in this little write-up here. When all other office staff are looking for the reason the mail is getting lost, a person in the condition of liability keeps on secretly losing the mail. It never occurred to me that that's actually kind of a contradiction. You can't secretly lose something. You can secretly hide something, or you can accidentally lose something.
Purposely losing something.
Yeah. Okay, unless he's using a different definition of the word lose. Okay, so decide who your friends are. So here's how that would look. And a Scientologist is actually writing this down on paper and revising it over and over and over. This would be, my friends are people who take care. Let's say they were losing the mail, and first they had to figure out how they were losing all this mail. So my friends are people who take care to study all of the policies of their post and make sure to clear all of their misunderstood words so that they do not accidentally misapply the procedures that results in destruction and loss and hurt other people. Or my friends are mail carriers who pay proper attention to their job and do not let themselves get distracted and do not lose the mail. Like, that's what it means when it says decide who your friends are. It's not, well, my friend is Steve, who I play cards with on Thursday night, and my friend is Joe, who every time I walk by him, I say hi to him. That's not what that means.
It kind of sounds like a 4th grade essay, only cult style.
Yes. Now, I truly believe that, with the hindsight now of being out of the cult and having done thousands of these conditions formulas, these conditions formulas are basically how Scientologists brainwash themselves. It puts the responsibility, the weight on your shoulders to recondition yourself so that someone else doesn't have to constantly do it for you. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. So my friends are people who actually care about their job and, blah, 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 blah. Okay. And you might even go, examples of people like this are the executive director of the org. You usually have to, you have to kiss major ass to get through these conditions, right? Okay. Because when you finish writing all this up, you have to turn the write-up into either your senior or the ethics officer for final approval. And they might tell you, oh, you haven't properly examined, you haven't properly fleshed out step 1, and they'll send you back to do it again. Okay. All right. Step 2, deliver an effective blow to the enemies of the group, to the enemies of the group that you've been pretending to be a part of, even though there's personal danger in doing this. Okay. Now, personal danger in delivering an effective blow. Let me read this again. It's interesting to me. The language that they've used in this step has been slightly modified to try and make it make more sense, but it's not the way that I'm used to reading it. So let me just read it again as it's written. Deliver an effective blow, forceful action to the enemies of the group. The group here is your friends in step 1 above, right? So your friends are basically the people who do their jobs correctly. The enemies of that group are people who don't. Okay.
Okay.
So deliver an effective blow to the enemies of the group you've been pretending to be a part of. So you've only been pretending to be a part of the group that does their job well.
The good group. Okay.
Yeah. You've only been pretending to be a part of the good group.
So you're delivering a blow to yourself?
No. Well, no, because you are now removing yourself from the group of the enemies, and you're delivering a blow to that group that you're leaving.
Okay.
And it can't just be some delivering some effective blow that's easy to do. You have to do it despite personal danger. Okay. So this would be, for example, maybe writing reports on, and this is literally how a Scientologist would do this. They would now sit down and let's write knowledge reports on maybe some of their other fellow new staff members who've been really slacking on the job, maybe criticizing and making fun of people in the org who actually work hard and care about their posts. So basically, you're conditioning yourself to be good guys good, bad guys bad. And the good guys are the people who are saying you're being bad. And you go, how do I make myself a good guy in the eyes of the people who are saying I'm a bad guy? Well, you've got to basically turn on the people who maybe have been supporting your slacking. And you're not really. So you're literally going to write reports on people who talk shit in the org, or maybe say, I can't believe I have to be in the org on Sunday. I wish I was watching the football game. Or, being like, oh, Susie's such an ass kisser. She's always trying to get her stats up. Well, that's negativity. That's in Theta. That's natter. And
so if no one knew that and you do those reports on them, then they'll end up in ethics conditions. And maybe,
that's right.
And then maybe
Well,
that's how you ended up, because someone did a bogus report on you. Aaron's secretly losing the mail.
that's right.
Oh my
And
God.
so you have to actually explain what the personal danger was in the effective blow that you delivered. And you'd be like, well, John and Stacy were really good friends of mine. And by writing them up, the danger is that they would no longer want to be my friend. Like, this is literally what you would write. So
Yeah.
I wrote knowledge reports on John and Stacy for being slack and being disaffected and nattering about the upstat, hardworking members of the group. And they were my friends. And so the personal danger was that they may not want to talk to me anymore. And also they might write false reports on me to get me in trouble. And that was the personal danger. So you actually have to explain all of that when you write this up. Okay.
Wow.
Now, this is where the amends comes into play, is step 3. Make up the damage you have done to the group by personal contribution far greater than is normally asked or expected of a group member. I just love how it says far greater.
Yeah. Like you haven't already given your life's blood to this, right?
That's right. Because imagine you're doing these lower conditions. You're already a Sea Org member. Okay. You're already dedicated the next billion years to Scientology.
Yeah.
You already work 120 hours a week on a tough week. And now you've got to do something far in excess. Okay. Contribution
like scrubbing the bathroom with a toothbrush.
Well, that would just be a
Cruise?
penalty. That actually wouldn't be considered making amends.
Oh,
That would actually be separate from lower conditions. That would
okay.
just
So
be
you have to
being
do
put on.
something really good. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, this actually has to be something that would be considered to be helping the group.
Good.
So
Okay.
this might be, I stayed up all night for 3 nights in a row to white glove, white glove is cleaning, so it passes with a white glove.
Yeah.
To white glove the reception area, since L. Ron Hubbard policy says that cleanliness of quarters can raise the income of the org. And the week that I did this, the registrar closed an extra $15,000 training package. And so like you literally have to make a case for how what you did helped the group far in excess of what you did. Or, you know, the director of communications had Thursday morning before 2, the director of communications had no way to get to the post office to mail the letters out for the week. And this would have resulted in a crashed statistic. So I let her use my car, and to go to the post office, and the stats were up that week and we won the birthday game. Like you can take the smallest thing and make it seem like it's a big thing. Like,
right. But wouldn't you be in trouble for taking credit for that?
No.
Oh,
You
okay.
you can take credit for whatever you want, because you're not, I mean, you're not really taking credit for winning the birthday game, but you are taking credit for contributing. Like, it's not really your job to let the DIRCOM use your car. That's not necessarily expected, right? And so, and this is one of the things where you either have to give it to your ethics officer or give it to your senior, and they have to look at it and they go, no, I don't think you've done enough. Keep going.
Okay. And if they don't like you, they probably will do that.
That is right. And it's not like you have some appeal process. Like, the person who assigned you the condition, as long as they're your senior or the ethics officer, is the only person who can give you permission to move on to step 4. And so step 4 is request approval to re-enter the group by asking the permission of each member of it to rejoin. Rejoin only when the majority give their permission. And if you are refused approval to re-enter the group, repeat steps 2, 3, and 4 until you are allowed to be a group member again.
So your peers decide.
This is quite literally, this is done exactly literally as it sounds. So the person sits down and writes up all as we've gone through each step, right? I said the person literally sits down and writes it up. Step 1, decide who are your friends, and you write it all out as a paragraph. Step 2, deliver an effective blow. You write out everything you did and you explain how it was an effective blow, and you explain the personal danger. Make up the damage. You sit down, you write up everything you did, whether it was 10 hours or 100 hours, you write it all up. And then for step 4, you literally say, I am now requesting approval to rejoin the group, you put a column for yes and a column for no, and you have to take that paper or copies of that paper around to every single staff member. This assumes you are a staff member, okay?
Right.
Every single staff member, and stand in front of them while they read everything you wrote, and stand in front of them while they sign yes or no.
Now, what if some of them are the ones you wrote a KR on?
Well,
you won't
they're
ask
probably
them?
going to say no. But that's okay, because all you need is the majority. So as soon as you have 50% plus, as soon as you have 50% plus one, you can go back to the ethics officer and ask, to be officially graduated from that formula. Now, this is one of the ways where some subjective enforcement of this policy can enter in from the ethics officer, because some ethics officers will go, well, that's fine. You only need 50% plus one. So once you get 50% plus one, you can stop asking people. Other people will say, no, it says you have to ask everyone.
Oh.
And you pass when you get 50 plus one, but you still have to ask everyone. So that's an example where some ethics officers will say one thing, other ethics officers will say another thing. Also, if you are a department head, then chances are you're only going to pass this out to staff members who are department heads or above, because you don't consider people lower on the org board to you to truly be necessarily part of your group. Again, this is another a place where enforcement of this or application of this can be a little selective or vary from place to place.
You said you did hundreds, if not thousands, of these cycles?
All staff members and SEERG members have done dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of these. Yes.
Really?
I mean, keep in mind, you do conditions formulas every single week after you get your stats completed for the week. I probably haven't done hundreds of lower conditions. I've probably done many dozens of lower conditions. But as far as the conditions in general, every single week, Thursday at 2, you end the week, you do your stats, you mark your graphs, you see what condition you're in, and you write up your weekly condition formula. This is, it's part of the Scientology stat management system. Yeah.
Wow. So you get through the week and your stats are up, then your power?
Well, it depends on how far up they are. So if your stat is up a little bit, you're in normal. If your stat is up a lot, you're in affluence. If your stat is on a trend where it went up a lot and then you kept it up, then that's power.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I mean, at least there's a little bit of a formula, because on the one hand, you've got these things that are like pretty much cut and dry, right? Your stats are up, they're not. Or if you have like an attitude, or you miss a dose of sugar in Tom Cruise's coffee or whatever, then it's subjective, right? And that's where it's very much like Fundy Pentecostal. Because in my case, there's so many things that really are very similar. And starting with the whole liability thing, they're sitting in the camp, right? Somebody's not doing their job. Somebody has grieved the Holy Spirit. All these really weird terms, right? There's no formula for it, but it gets you on edge, and it gets you looking at yourself, looking at other people. And then, I'm looking at the lower conditions here. There's a liability. And the biggest thing you could do is not have faith, is to doubt Marilyn as the cult leader. And not just my cult, Pentecostal cults across the board, right? Are like that. They're very mystical, and you're constantly on a witch hunt, either in yourself, looking for demons, looking for sin, or in other people. And it just makes you freaking paranoid, and you're always in confusion. But yeah, so I just remember that whole mind, game of it all. But how do you think it affected you? How you're brainwashing yourself, and you're out of the cult. What do you feel, or what do you think when you look back at this?
It is. I mean, the term brainwashing is a loaded term, but if we set that to the side and we acknowledge that we know what it means, we know what we mean by it. It really is auto brainwashing. It really is self brainwashing. It really, really is, and it is powerful and it is effective, especially when you you come to just know that successfully getting through these formulas is the way to continue to successfully be a part of this group, and that conformity to those above you is the key to success in this group. This creates a way of thinking that when you're in the cult, you don't realize how cult-like that is. It just seems like the key to survival. Outside of the cult, it to me is so obvious that this is a form of conditioning, mental conditioning, brainwashing. It's kind of brilliant in its own way for its own use. And, I want to give a real life example outside of Scientology orgs of how Scientologists use this stuff on kids, for example. So like, I have a younger brother. He's 6 years younger than me. He's my half brother, Darius DiMartino. And his dad, Frank DiMartino, and my mom divorced when Darius was 2. And Darius was mostly raised by his dad, Frank. Frank was one of these militant Scientologists who would use Scientology lower ethics conditions on Darius in a very harsh way. And so an example would be if Frank would come home from work at the end of the day and the gate to the fence in the backyard where the dog may or may not have been, the gate wasn't completely latched. And when Frank comes home and he comes to enter the house, he finds the gate wasn't completely latched. And so if the dog had been out there, the dog would have gotten out possibly. Then he would come home and say, okay, Darius, you're in a condition of treason. Get to your room and start writing the formula. And this is for a kid who was maybe 7 years old, 8 years old, 9 years old. And you're starting from treason and you're having to work up enemy, doubt, liability. So like, just imagine like you're a freaking kid. And I try to put myself in Darius's shoes in this scenario. And I just go, I feel like I get to a point where I just feel like my dad doesn't really love me. He doesn't really care about me. I'm just a cog in some machine. I'm just someone who can be handled with formulas. He doesn't value me as a human or a son or a family member. The dog's more important than me. And every smallest, littlest thing has meaningful repercussions. Because also, if you're in lower ethics conditions in Scientology, for example, you're not eligible for any awards. So if you're in a lower ethics condition, but you have great stats that week, you're not allowed to participate in whatever the reward is for the stat. The lower condition supersedes your statistical production. And so if you're Darius,
someone, I mean, according to Scientology, I don't mean to interrupt, but I'm just trying to wrap my head around this. What would they think that Darius's motivation was? Like, what's his problem? Is it because his reactive mind is so active and
that's actually a brilliant question. That's actually a brilliant question, because this is one of the ways that L. Ron Hubbard describes the purpose of ethics is to put more pressure on the individual than their reactive mind is exerting on them. And that with enough ethics, you can sort of push the reactive mind away.
Yes. Yeah.
That's a brilliant question.
Very similar to other cults, seriously, because you are trying to, like in my case, it was called being broken, being humbled. There were different levels of it. If you were being humbled, it was you were stripped of all, privileges, even foods at times, that you were sent to your room to lay on your face and cry out before God for mercy. I remember one woman, it was supposedly a traitor. She asked the wrong questions and she gossiped about Marilyn, supposedly. And she came back in the fold, but she had to sit in the back of the congregation and not say a word for 3 months. She couldn't pray. She couldn't sing. She couldn't do anything. She just had to sit there. And she was being, quote, broken. So there were these things, and it was supposedly good for you. You had to thank Marilyn. You had to thank the board of directors. You had to thank the elders and God for breaking you and humbling you, because your spirit person was being fed, and your sinful person and all the demons that attached to it were being put into like a suppressive state and gone and dead, considered dead. And it was a good thing.
Wow.
But it's like so messed up because you hate yourself, you hate doubt, the devil, you hate sin, you hate. So you're just freaking out, and you're just like, I got to the point where I was like, just tell me what to do, just tell me what to think. I can't anymore.
Wow. So yeah, there are people in Scientology who get into the framework or the mental, they get to a place mentally where they go, I don't know why I am the way that I am. I don't know why my reactive mind makes me commit all these overts. I don't know why I can't remember to lock the gate. But since my seniors who've been in Scientology longer than me and they're higher up on the bridge than I am and they know better than me, since they're saying I'm in a lower condition, the greatest thing I can do for myself is to, whether I understand it or not, commit myself to these steps and this formula. And hopefully one of these days I'll figure out what's wrong with me,
Right.
And that's why it's almost like, it's an auto brainwashing system, but it's also almost like a filtering effect where, eventually you have trained compliance.
Yep.
You have trained compliance because people who don't comply with this form of ethics, justice, discipline, and punishment are eventually just kicked out. So you're left with people who are willing to be compliant.
Yeah, you're looking at yourself and like, you can't trust yourself. You can't trust your own thoughts. It's all about what the cult leader lays out for you and tells you what to think, what to be, how to act. Yeah, it's just genius,
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why I like to look into these things, because I feel like I know for myself that once I understood what happened to me, then I felt like I could deconstruct and deprogram and move on, because it empowered me, to take my power back. So, and that's why I feel so like I belong with this whole, community, because there's so many similarities, and I think we can understand each other.
Yeah. That's amazing. This whole this idea of only seeing someone through the lens of how valuable they are to the group is something that, although I accepted it as a necessary way to survive in the group, I never truly internalized it. Like, and for me, that was demonstrated by the fact that we never did any of this shit with our kids. Like the idea of making a kid feel that his value or worth as a person is solely dependent on how valuable or contributive they are to their parents is such a weird, sick way of thinking about a child or trying to raise a child that, I've said in a lot of my videos, neither Heather nor I ever had or even tried to have any of our kids do any Scientology courses or any Scientology auditing or anything whatsoever. And that definitely includes this idea of trying to introduce the idea of conditions to them or lower conditions or giving them statistics. Like Scientologists will give their kids stats. And
like public Scientologists?
Yes.
To their
Yes.
children?
Give their kids stats. Whether it's number of chores done or number of days in the week that you got all your chores done or something, and give them graphs and they have to mark it at the end of the day. It's not all Scientology parents,
Hi, Barb.
Hi, Barb.
Love you, Barb.
It's just Barb just wanted to make her presence felt. we feel the presence. But yeah, like that your value is dictated by that. Not just that it's fun to give kids things to do, not just like, keep the kid from going crazy by like giving him something to do. It's almost like, no, he has to have something to do. Otherwise he's going to become a criminal.
Assigning their worth. Right. Yeah, just all these extreme words like treason and criminal. And does he really even know what those freaking mean? Jeez.
Yeah, in Scientology, they define criminal as someone who receives more than they give. That makes you a criminal. That's literally the definition.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty extreme. So
imagine
you and your
a
wife,
child,
you and Heather didn't look at your kids as old thetans in little bodies, right? Like,
No.
you felt like they were children.
Yeah, absolutely.
You loved
Yeah,
them. You loved your
I,
children.
I,
You
I
love your
never bought into the whole. It's like I was gonna say I never bought into the whole, trillion-year old thetans in little bodies, and but in a sense, like I did buy into the idea of a trillion-year-old thetan. I just
right.
never bought into the idea that that's how you're supposed to treat a child or think about a child. Like,
Yeah.
children are children. They're gonna screw up most of what they do. That's part of
Yeah.
being a child. It's not like, how come this trillion-year-old thetan can't figure out how to get themselves dressed on time every morning? They're out ethics. They have evil purposes. They're in a lower condition. Like, you can't think about people that way. And that's one of those things where, like, not all Scientology parents are as militant as my brother's father was. And I know there's a lot of Scientologists who would watch videos, talking about how Scientologist parents act, and they would be like, but that's just not true. And that's just not true. And that's just because not all Scientologists are as militant as each other,
Right.
even though Scientology itself is quite militant in its nature. Like, Scientology would hold there's only one Scientology. And if you're not applying it to this level, then you're not applying it correctly. So
Right.
Scientology itself, I believe, is by nature militant, but you
Yeah.
still have, it's still also true that not all members apply it to that same level. You know what I mean?
Right. But if you apply it to the extreme level, then you're good. Like, it's more and more sacrifice. And if you're willing to sacrifice your own children as well as yourself, like,
Yeah.
and the Bible, not to pick on the Bible, but people take it way out of extreme. And that's why I ended up in a cult. Is there's certain things that get twisted and brought to the extreme. Like, there is something, allegorical, but it says, like, he who does not discipline his son hates them. Right. So basically they take that as, if you don't beat your son, if you don't treat them like the Duggars did, this was a book that not only the Duggars used, but my cult used. And if you see, it's like breaking a horse. This is the blanket training, the whipping, the indoctrination, and just treating your child like an animal, literally. And this is really what got me out of the cult, because I couldn't bear to do it to my own children. I could do it to myself, but when it came to them, that was it. But it took a while to even get out of it,
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just, I don't know. It's like this thing of, like, dehumanizing yourself and just making yourself less than for the sake of the group. Classic cult, for the good of the group. Yeah.
That's a really good example of, okay, so the quote that you said was, one more time, from the Bible?
Yeah. He who does not discipline his son hates his son. So if you
Wow.
love your child, you will beat them. If you yeah.
Well, I think it's such a great example, though, because when I hear the statement, I immediately interpret it in a way that, to me, makes sense. That if you love your kids, you will teach them how to be disciplined people. And I can
Right.
see how someone could also turn that into, I'm beating you because I love you.
Yeah. Right.
It's a great example.
Yeah. And you're beating them into submission.
Yeah.
And a lot of times what happens is dissociation,
Mm.
and and when I was in the cult, it was constant, just, making you feel like you're nothing, you're less than, you're evil. You have to empty yourself and fill yourself with God, because everything about you is bad. Just like the reactive mind, we had the sin nature, and the thing that kept me, I'm making a stack of dishcloths, is just sitting in the corner trying to keep myself in my body, and making, blankets and dishcloths. Now I make silly things like that, but yeah, it just helped me to kind of stay in my body, because you just want to give up. You just want to, and that's why a lot of these cults have very, very high unaliving rates, because that's the
Wow.
end result. That's the end result.
Wow.
Because
I have a question.
Yeah.
When you hear Scientologists talking about what they learn about body thetans on the upper levels,
Yeah.
does that sound exactly like demons to you?
It does to a degree. The only thing is, like, we hate our demons, so we're like trying to get them out because we're not trying to help them. They're going to hell already. It seems like the body thetans, you almost feel sorry for them, and they're sort of like freeloaders. Like, they don't have to pay to go clear. You just make them clear and like run along, you know. But these are like intruders that you're just like, oh my god, like, and it just makes you paranoid and scared. I don't know that many OTs. I have talked to Natalie Webster about it. And, you know, she's just an easygoing person anyway. She's just like, yeah, you know, I get a little vacation. I had this thing strapped to me, went to a hotel. You know, I didn't have my 3 kids to cook for, whatever. So she's just like, yeah, that's cool, you know, but it does feel like that because it's always this looking within. You're bad. You have something in you. You have invaders, you know, that are making you bad. Not only do you have these body thetans, but you have the reactive mind, right? And this thing too, with the carrot on the stick, just when you think, like Marilyn called it, the way of the cross, just when you think that you've arrived and God is happy with you, nope, there's more. You have to go deeper and deeper and deeper into this, you know, pool of hate of yourself. You hate yourself, you know. That's how
Wow. You're right. That is
yeah,
a bit of a difference. Whereas the body thetans are considered to be a negative effect upon you, but they are not considered to be bad in
an
their
enemy.
own right. They're really
Mhm.
considered to be just like you, but in a worse state. And you're basically helping them by waking them up, getting rid of their reactive mind, and sending them off to go pick up a body and live as a real boy or girl,
So,
with
but
some chance of,
were they the ones that were in the volcanoes?
yeah.
Were you in the volcano? No.
No, everyone who occupies a body as the primary thetan in that body is not should not have been involved
I'm
in
just
the
laughing because
volcano
this really
incident.
isn't real, but we're just like, and then what
I know.
happened?
Yeah. I actually,
We're in
as
the
I sit
volcano.
here
Then
right
how did
now,
you get here?
so I actually don't know the answer to that question. I want to talk to some of the former Scientologists to find out from them what they always thought the answer to that question was. Because L. Ron Hubbard in many lectures will casually say something like, Scientologists are higher level beings arrived more recently here on Earth, but he won't say how they arrived here on Earth. So in other words, because they got here more recently, they're less messed up than everyone else. And that's why the truth
Okay.
of
Oh, so they
Scientology
just kind
resonates
of
more.
postulated themselves over here? Like
No,
they're
no, no,
no?
because Scientology also believes that the only reason we are here, L. Ron Hubbard says this, is that this is a prison planet and
Right.
we are the misfits, the revolutionaries, the artists, the communicators, basically everyone that a fascistic dictator regime would be worried would uprise and inspire the population and cause an upheaval. And so this is the
They box them
gulag.
up
This
in
is
boxes.
this is like the prison. This Earth is a tiny
Yeah.
little planet on the outs on the far flying arm of the galaxy, or far flung arm of the galaxy, but he never actually explains how we as beings more recently arrived to this planet actually got here. Or I should say, I never heard any explanation for that. And it's not something like the Scientology courses that you do have nothing to do with any of this stuff. All of this
Mm.
space opera stuff is stuff that Scientologists hear Ron talking about in like lectures you have to listen to, but that don't really have anything to do with, normal Scientology training. And
Mm.
so it's kind of interesting. It's fun to listen to. You're really listening to it for historical purposes, but it doesn't really have anything to do with day-to-day Scientology life. And so Scientologists don't spend a lot of time talking about this stuff. So like
Right.
we hear the story of how the body thetans got here. That's the Xenu, that's the volcanoes, that's the hydrogen bombs.
Right.
But those thetans that were subjected to that are the body thetans. I don't know how us normal thetans were brought to Earth, according to the old man L. Ron Hubbard. I just don't know what the answer to that question is. That would be a really fun video to do with some other former members who have their own
Yeah, and
ideas
and,
about that.
and if you know any like higher OTs that are out that can talk about like what they went through, because I'm always up in the fields. Like I want to know the psychology of it and how people felt and how they got out of it. That to me, that's really, really fascinating. So I want to know, like I've heard that a lot of OT 7s and 8s are a little bit like that they're a little off. And I'm sure I would be too, because I am a little off just from what I went through sitting, in a room, like trying to cast demons out of myself and all that, and just not being able to. And this was another thought I had too when you were talking about this being a prison planet. We
Yeah.
called this a fallen earth, a fallen nature because of Adam and Eve and the apple. We've talked about all that. So it's like this isn't our home. We're in the world, but not of it. This is a bad place, but God has us here as like his ambassadors, like we're trying to clear it, whatever. We're trying to make it righteous. Right. But then the rapture happens and God destroys it with fire in the end, but whatever. But anyways, this is not, a good place to be because it's a prison planet or it's fallen nature and all that. So it makes you not be able to enjoy life. Your children are a sacrifice. Or your children aren't really children. You were, you know what I mean? They could have been, in your case, we didn't believe in reincarnation, but it's the same concept of this place is bad. You can't enjoy it or else you're bad,
Amazing. How about we tackle some comments and then wrap this one up?
Absolutely.
Okay. William wants to know, can you please comment on the difference between opinion and truth in Scientology? Interesting question. Difference between opinion and truth. In my opinion, just speaking from my firsthand takeaway from my time in Scientology, Scientology would say that truth is not relative, that there is absolute truth. And it's not, like I've listened to a lot of conversations, for example, between like Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson. I heard these guys argue for 3 hours about the definition of truth and is truth absolute or relative. Scientology, in my opinion, says truth is absolute. And L. Ron Hubbard is pretty much the one who says what the absolute truth is.
Right.
Now, there's a phrase in Scientology, what's true is what's true for you. But that doesn't mean what a lot of people think that means. That is something that's a quote taken from L. Ron Hubbard that is put in the introductory Scientology courses. And the quote is telling the new student that, look, something L. Ron Hubbard says is true isn't just true because he said it. We don't want you to say it's true because L. Ron Hubbard said it. We want you to believe this is true because you yourself have observed it and seen it to be true for yourself. Now, that doesn't mean if you don't think it's true, it's not true.
Right.
It means you haven't met the grade yet. You haven't made the grade yet. It's sort of it's another brainwashing
There's something
technique.
wrong with you if you don't think it's true.
That's
you're
right.
The problem.
It's almost saying, don't blame L. Ron Hubbard that you believe this. Blame yourself.
Yep.
Like, that's what that means. A Scientologist is not allowed to read something L. Ron Hubbard wrote and say, well, that one's not true for me. Oh, you're not allowed to say that. If you say that's not true,
don't question Lafayette.
Don't question Lafayette. So honestly, the difference between opinion, what was the original statement? The difference between opinion and truth is that an opinion is what you think and the truth is what's true. I mean, I'm sorry to answer the question with such an obvious statement, but you can have an opinion about whether Joe is a dick or not. You can't have an opinion about whether L. Ron Hubbard was right or not. Okay. Oh, this is funny. I wonder if the staff at Flag are sometimes referred to as flag staff. Yes, they are sometimes referred to as flag staff. I'd be like, I was in the Sea Org. You could say I was staff at Flag, or some people say I was flag staff from like 98 to 2003. That's absolutely one of the ways people would
That's
speak.
a thing.
Edmonds Fitzgerald says, sometimes people get in trouble and then they make stuff up when they talk to the ethics officer because they tell the ethics officer what they think the ethics officer wants to hear. Yes. Edmonds says, I've been reported for being too likable as an ethics officer. Not a joke. Yeah, it's true. There's whole policies L. Ron Hubbard wrote on what the personality of an ethics officer is supposed to be. And he's certainly
I would
not.
get in so much trouble for being cheerful, and it made people stumble, especially the men, because I had blonde hair. So I dyed it dark and I would just sit in the corner and crochet, and I would still get in trouble.
Yeah, you are supposed to be afraid of the ethics officer. You're supposed to be intimidated by the ethics officer to an extent that ethics officers are supposed to carry around sticks with brass ends as a form of it's not like they're supposed to pretend to hit people, but it's supposed to be it's supposed to be symbolic. Yeah, it's supposed to be intimidating. Yeah.
Wow.
Okay, knowledgeable beard boy. Hi, Marilyn and Aaron. First live and first super chat, as I am a truck driver and I'm always
Hey,
on the replay crew. Just wanted to say hi and
welcome.
love you both. Welcome.
Thank you. Great to see you. Thank you.
DM says, Aaron, sometimes you're assigned to do a lower condition and work your way up past doubt 3 times over. That's like doing treatment 3 times after the problem is fixed the first time. Abuse.
Okay.
That's true. I forgot about that. Sometimes you are assigned to do conditions several times through, which is honestly completely contrary to the idea of doing conditions. Like, if you have honestly moved from one condition up to another condition, then that's the condition that you're in. You're not in the lower condition. So this is an example of conditions just being used as pure punishment and not actually as a tool to improve conditions in life. I forgot all about that. Thank you
Wow.
for bringing that up.
I love how there's so many ex-Scientologists in your chat. I love it.
Sean C. Kate, welcome as a new channel member.
Well,
Johnny says, what does it take for someone to realize they're in a cult?
wow.
I don't know.
Sometimes you don't realize it until after you're out. You just know it's crazy and abusive and terrible, and you just can't. You either want to not be in existence anymore, or you have to leave. And then I think, for me at least, watching your story, Aaron, and Liz Gale, and all the ex-Scientologists on Scientology and the Aftermath with Leah Remini, it really did help me a lot to understand what the hell happened to me. I didn't know I was in a cult until 5 years later, 10 years later. Yeah.
You just as you were saying that, I was reminded of the fact that one of the best ways to wake someone up that they're in a cult is to have them watch a show or a movie or a documentary about some other cult.
Right.
Because like, Scientologists don't think they're in a cult. They don't even think they might be in a cult. So,
Right.
but like, if you know a Scientologist, suggest them, say, have you ever seen the documentary on Nexium? And they'll go, oh my God, what's that? Is that a vitamin? And you go, no, Nexium is this crazy cult founded by this guy. And you're like, you're going to love it. It's amazing. It's a crazy story. And then they're going to watch this documentary and they're going to go, uh-oh.
Yeah. It starts to erode the cognitive dissonance that you've done to yourself for so many years. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. Just a Northern Girl says, when two cults collide. I love this discussion and the reactions of the two of you when discovering that your cults are the same, just in a different language.
Yeah, it's wild. It really is.
Yeah. Powered lies to paralyze. Principal incidents on the Theta line, 10 March 1952, milestone 1, lecture 22, gives the best answers to your thetan history question.
Okay, then.
Wow. So many people leaving Scientology in my area have given me so much of their materials that I might even have that lecture in my garage.
Really?
I'm gonna have to check that out. Ben Bacon Bits, thanks for the show, Aaron. Interesting. And remember, Costco is calling. Poor Costco people wondering, where is our Aaron? Oh, they're not wondering. I was there yesterday, Ben. I was there. Yeah. I went to go show my support. All right, let's see. It's 2:00 in about 2 hours. I've got another live stream that I need to do. So this has been a blast. I can't believe we just killed an hour.
I know.
That's amazing.
I still have a lot of topics if you're game for another one.
Oh, let's do this. Let's keep doing this. These are fun. I love doing these.
Awesome.
Guys, remember, that's not the right one. Oh, I see, because you screen shared and then I screen shared. I just want to show your channel one more time. You can find Marilyn on YouTube at Coffee, Cults, and Crafts. She's got a lot of great stuff over there.
Thank you.
Thanks for hanging out with us, everyone, and we will talk to you soon.
Bye.
Okay, if you want to see my rock and roll songs, click right on this guitar. And if you want to see a different one of my videos, then you could click right inside here. If you have subscribed or not, subscribe right here. Bye.